Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mark Wu. I'm the director of the Fairbank Center. It's my pleasure to welcome all of you to the last event of this semester for the Critical Issues Confronting China series. I'm delighted that so many of you have been with us for so many of the programs that we've held this year. And I think we have a fantastic program this afternoon focusing on Chinese foreign policy and the political implications of the Xi era on the shaping of that foreign policy. Before I dive into introducing today's speaker, I want to draw your attention to two other events that we'll be holding this week at the Fairbank Center. The first is, since I presume many of you are interested in Chinese foreign policy, I want to draw your attention to the fact that this evening we will be co-hosting an event at the Harvard Kennedy School, where the annual S.T. Lee lecture will be delivered by Rush Doshi. Some of you may know that Professor Doshi served as a senior director for China and Taiwan affairs, most recently in the National Security Council under the Biden administration. He's also the author of one of the most well-known books analyzing Chinese foreign policy in the Xi era, known as The Long Game. And so he'll be discussing his views, now shaped and informed by his time in government, on the long game and what he's presented in that book. And the other event that I want to draw to your attention to is on this Friday. The Fairbank Center Gender Studies Workshop will be hosting an all-day workshop entitled this year, The Beauty in the Book. It's looking at women, knowledge, literature, and book culture in late imperial China and beyond. And that lecture will be in honor of our longtime center associate, Ellen Widmer. So I just want to make you aware of both events, both this evening's S.T. Lee lecture, as well as this Friday's Gender Studies Workshop all-day conference. But the focus of today's event is, of course, China's leadership and China's foreign policy. On both of these, I think very little needs to be said. We certainly see an expanding footprint of Chinese foreign policy, whether that's with regards to Africa, Latin America, the Belt and Road Initiative, but also more recently, the expansion of growing influence from within shaping events within the Russia-Ukraine war to wanting to try to affect events in the Middle East to more closer to home, the Korean Peninsula and also the South China Seas. We certainly see a more active Chinese foreign policy taking hold over the last decade. Beyond that, however, is the question of who is shaping Chinese foreign policy and who particular in this new era under General Secretary Xi Jinping, with the concentration of power within the Politburo, with the latest party Congress having brought on a new slate of players, with the concentration of foreign policy in the hands of Wang Yi, including holding the post of foreign minister. There's also an important question as to who shapes and what are the dynamics underlying the development of Chinese foreign policy today. And for that topic, I can't think of a better person to welcome back here to the Fairbank Center than Professor Suisheng Zhao. Professor Zhao is the professor and also director of the Center of China and U.S. Cooperation at the University of Denver. He is author of an acclaimed award-winning book entitled The Dragon Roars Back, which gives a sense of the topic he's going to touch on today, Xi Jinping's sense of mission to restore China's rightful place in the world, to shape global discourse, and the intricacies of how those developments unfold within the Politburo and beyond. He is also the founding editor of the Journal of Contemporary China, which I think is well known to all of you, as well as a member of the Board of Governors of the U.S. Committee of the Council for Security Cooperation in the Asia Pacific. And last but not least, I'm also happy to welcome Professor Zhao back to the Fairbank Center, because I think the Fairbank Center was an important place at the launch of his career, and I think we've been delighted to claim his illustrious career as part of the legacy here at the Fairbank Center. We're also equally delighted to welcome back today to our discussant, Professor Robert Ross. Professor Ross is a professor of political science at Boston College, I think well known to many of you because he's also a center associate here at the Fairbank Center. And he, of course, is one of the top experts on China's foreign policy and national security himself. And so he'll be speaking and delivering a couple of remarks in his role as discussant, as well as moderating today's discussion. So will you please join me in welcoming Professor Zhao and Professor Ross.
Thank you, Professor, and also thank Bob for giving me this opportunity to be back to Fairbank Center to talk about my book and about current development on the foreign policy making in Xi Jinping's China. When this talk is based upon my book, Professor Wang mentioned, published by Stanford University Press, titled The Dragon Roars Back, Transformational Leaders and Dynamics of Chinese Foreign Policy. When you give a book talk, the first question people ask you is, why did you write that book? On one hand, my answer is that I'm teaching a class on the Chinese foreign policy making. For many years, I did not find a right book for adoption in the class, because most books I try to find are unidimensional, as I mentioned in the book, meaning that they are either focused on certain periods of the PRC or certain issue areas of the PRC or certain bilateral relationships of China with certain countries without the comprehensive framework covering more than 70 plus years of the PRC foreign policy making. So my book tried to provide historically in-depth and up-to-date analysis of the Chinese foreign policy making. The second answer to the question is that I try and find a theoretical framework to understand China's foreign policy making. Two theories has been used most often and by scholars to understand China's foreign policy behavior, especially in last decades, are one, the structural realist theory, which emphasizes relative power and argues that when China's relative power increases, its power ambition expands. More powerful China would inevitably challenge the U.S. predominance in the world and also redefine its relationships with its neighbors. This theory is helpful and may help us understand the rising power behavior of China in that last decade. But if we extend this, using this theory to understand the whole 70 plus years of PRC foreign policy making, we find problems. When China's relative power was seriously constrained in the early years of the PRC, Mao Zedong took a very, very confrontational foreign policy stance, fighting, in my book, 6 wars, including the war against the U.S., the most powerful nation on earth, in the Korean Peninsula. China's relative power did not change that much when Deng Xiaoping came to power and moderated Chinese foreign policy behavior. And his successors, Jiang Zemin and Hu Jintao, continued the moderate foreign policy, but China's power increased dramatically during Jiang Zemin and Hu Jintao years because China was recognized as rising power. And Xi Jinping came to office. China's relative power, I don't know how do you see it. In the last 12 years, 13 years, the most accomplished job Xi Jinping has done is to consolidate his power, not develop the economy. So China economy slowed down, but Jiang Zemin, Xi Jinping took a very, very confrontational, big power foreign policy. Some people even argue that, agree that Xi Jinping has overextended. When I say overreached, we talk about he set his foreign policy objective beyond the capacity of Chinese power. So the structural realist theory is helpful but have problem. Another theory used most often is regime type theory, arguing that China's foreign policy behavior is determined by its authoritarian regime. In other words, China's foreign policy behavior will not change unless a regime change takes place. In that case, of course not. China's foreign policy has many, many turns, many shifts during the last 70 plus years. But China's authoritarian regime continued. So in that case, my book developed a leadership-centered framework, which argues that leaders matter in all political systems, but matter more in authoritarian system, particularly China's authoritarian system, because the emphasis in the Chinese system is discipline and hierarchy. Leaders has almost unconstrained power to chart foreign policy directions. They are not constrained by term limits, not constrained by public opinions, not constrained by oppositional parties, whatever. But the problem here is that not every top leader or paramount leader, whatever you define that, has used those unconstrained authorities to chart new directions for Chinese foreign policy. Officially, China recognized 5 generations of leadership led by Mao Zedong, Deng Xiaoping, Jiang Zemin, Hu Jintao, and Xi Jinping. They missed 3 of them, general secretaries, Hua Guofeng, Zhao Ziyang, and Hu Yaobang. So if you put all these 8 top leaders together and looking at them, you can find they could be distinguished into 3 types of leadership. One is so-called transformational leaders. These leaders have new visions and political wisdom to navigate the political jungles in the power struggle in China, survival, in other words, survive, and mobilize domestic and international resources to advance their foreign policy agenda. Who are transformational leaders? Identify 3, Mao, Deng, and Xi Jinping. Each chart new course. Mao had what I call revolutionary foreign policy. In the Chinese official term, he made China stand up. And Deng Xiaoping had developmental foreign policy. In Chinese official term, he made China rich. And Xi Jinping, he has, in his own words, a great power foreign policy to make China strong. Second type is transactional leaders. They may survive, navigate well in the jungle of power politics in the PRC, stay in power, in other words. But they stayed on course set by their predecessors, who are transactional leaders, of course, Jiang Zemin and Hu Jintao. They each stayed for 10 years in power, but they stayed on course set by Deng Xiaoping. The third type are failed leaders. Who are those failed leaders? 华国锋、赵紫阳 and Hu Yaobang. These people, some of them may have new visions. For example, Hu Yaobang, even perhaps Zhao Ziyang. But who cares? You lost power. My book developed this framework, try to understand how those transformational leaders, basically Deng Xiaoping, Mao Zedong, Deng Xiaoping, and Xi Jinping, developed their new visions and stayed in power either by personal charismatic authority or institutional authority. And how do they mobilize domestic resources? Here I'm talking about two aspects. One is ideational, talking about historical memories, nationalist aspirations, and also institutional apparatus, restructure institutional apparatus. And also internationally, how they exploit international environments. Here I'm talking about global power distribution and norms, regimes, institutions, those kind of what we call international order. So this is the book. I can stop here, but I will not. I will not talk my book anymore. If I talk too much, you will not buy it. So let me move on to talk about, I was asked to talk today about Xi Jinping's foreign policy making. When I talk about foreign policy making, we all know the power of foreign policy making is immensely centralized in the hands of the top leaders. But they are supported by a very deep hierarchy, bureaucratic hierarchy at three levels. One is decision-making institutions, the Communist Party Central Committee. Communist Party is in charge, by the way, and Politburo Standing Committee. And the second tier is policy coordination and elaboration institutions, known as leadership small groups and commissions. These are behind-the-scene organizations to help top leaders to coordinate those bureaucracies in an interdepartmental matter. And third level is so-called bureaucratic, non-bureaucratic bureaucracies in the party government and the military. These are not decision-making institutions. Their jobs are gathering information, implement decisions made by the top leaders, and also make policy recommendations. Each leader, transformational leader has a unique leadership style to work with this hierarchy. Mao Zedong was founder of the PRC, had extremely powerful, charismatic authority, and he made decisions top-down. He did not like bureaucracy. So he met his lieutenant, Zhou Enlai. He was, at that time, concurrently foreign minister, to deal with bureaucracy. He made the strategic national security decisions personally. And Deng Xiaoping, also a strong man, but was a pragmatic strong man. He never took top positions. He put his proteges, Hu Yaobang, Zhao Ziyang, in the forefront, pull strings. But his style was consensus builder. He delegated those routine decisions to those bureaucrats in the front, automatically ratify them if they can reach consensus. He stepped in only they cannot reach consensus. His successors, Jiang Zemin, Hu Jintao, continued consensus building style under the banner of collective leadership. Xi Jinping changed everything. Xi Jinping now, I think, is the most powerful leader in the PRC history. He eliminated almost all his potential rivals and became the leader without really, we cannot identify any credible rivals at this time. I will argue that he has upset a non-standing power balance at top. Mao Zedong was balanced by Liu Shaoqi, Deng Xiaoping, and his wartime comrades. Deng Xiaoping was balanced by those elders, Chen Yun and others. Jiang Zemin was balanced by Deng Xiaoping. Hu Jintao was balanced by Jiang Zemin. Who is balancing? Xi Jinping. I don't see anyone. So he has changed the consensus building leadership style into a Xi in command model. He has advocated so-called top-level design, everything from top down. And he becomes, in that case, a micromanager or chairman of everything. I don't know if he has time to sleep in that case. And how Xi Jinping reached that point, he worked really hard, very brilliantly, took advantage of three triggers. One was, we all remember 12, 13 years ago when Xi Jinping came to office, people complained. When Beijing said Hu Jintao leadership was too weak and the collective leadership was too divisive to make decisive decisions and curb those corruption and liberal ideas, undermining the party's monopoly of power. When Xi Jinping came to office, he presented himself as strong leader, coping with the unprecedented challenge that brought down the Soviet Union. He talked about all those challenges. So he was the person to overcome those problems. So he consolidated power quickly with the consent of all those top elites. The second trigger, really, he was a lucky person because the high-profile scandals took place when he came to office. Bo Xilai, Zhou Yongkang, Lin Jihua, name it. So he used those scandals and launched a wide-sweeping anti-corruption campaign to serve two purposes. One was to purge his potential rivals. He did that. Second, to establish popularity. Who does not hate corruption? He became quite popular in that case. The third trigger was since 2008, especially 2008 Olympic, China people became confident in the nationalist aspirations, but they were also very frustrated by those so-called anti-China forces did not want to see China to rise. So this kind of nationalist confidence, aspiration, and frustration really create the soil for Xi Jinping to present his China dream, national rejuvenation, all those kind of aspirations, nationalist aspirations, put him in a very, very powerful position, popular position to consolidate his power. Xi Jinping's power consolidation has been institutionalized at all the three tiers of the foreign policy hierarchy. At the top level, Xi Jinping built personal power and personal loyalty to him as the norm, guiding the interactions of the top elite. He did all those. I think you are very familiar with them. I don't want to get into this. Let me move quickly to the second tier of the hierarchy. That is policy coordination and consultation organizations. For many years, these coordination or leadership small groups existed as ad hoc meetings. And most long-standing one was Central Foreign Affairs Leadership Small Group, which was established by Mao Zedong in 1957 as one of 7 leadership small groups to cut through bureaucracy. During the Cultural Revolution, they were banned. Central Foreign Affairs Leadership Small Group was banned and restored in 1981. And in 1999, after the embassy bombing, people talk about China lead a National Security Council to manage national security crisis. So Jiang Zemin created another foreign affairs leadership small group called Central National Security Leadership Small Group in 2018. Then Hu Jintao came to office. Maritime issues became so prominent. But there are 9 agencies, 九龙戏水, 9 agencies involved. So Hu Jintao created a central protecting maritime rights and interests leadership group. But the problem here was these are ad hoc meetings. They did not have regular staff. They all relied upon 中央外办 Central Foreign Affairs office only for that office. So they are not a daily operational team. They are just ad hoc, and really could not manage the increasingly demanding requirement of the leadership on the foreign policy issues. So Xi Jinping came to office, quickly fixed this problem. The first thing he did in 2013 was to establish a National Security Commission, which is a very high-level national security and foreign affairs leadership small group, but in the name of a commission, himself as a chair. This commission was established according to his new concept of national security. What was the new concept? National security, 总体国家安全观, kind of holistic national security concept, which integrated internal security with external security. But in the process, because in both sides, internal, external, this commission shifted his emphasis mostly on the internal or domestic security threat. Only those external threats related to internal security, such as Taiwan issue, such as Hong Kong issue, such as Tibet, Xinjiang issue, not broad external security. So in 2018, in the reorganization of the top institutions, Xi Jinping upgraded Central Foreign Affairs Leadership Small Group into Central Foreign Affairs Commission. What's the difference between a commission and a small group? Maybe not much differences. But commission is more formal, more bureaucratic. In fact, Xi Jinping himself is chairman. Wang Yi, he was at that time Politburo member, still Politburo member, not foreign minister at that time. He was the office director. You can see how high level it is. And then Xi Jinping has also used a lot of high level Central Foreign Affairs conferences, which invite all the stakeholders on the foreign policy arena, and also all the top leaders, Politburo Standing Committees members attend to unify leadership thinking on foreign policy. Before Xi Jinping, only 3 this type of meetings took place, Mao, Jiang, and Hu. How many times Xi Jinping has called that conference? 5 times. The most recent one was last month, the Central Periphery Conference, very high level. And also Xi Jinping restructured Chinese diplomatic envoy meetings from every 5 years to annually. He gave talks, presented those meetings to unify people's thinking, advance his policy agenda. And at bureaucratic level, Xi Jinping did 2 things to enhance his foreign policy making capacity. One is to politicize foreign policy bureaucracy. We all know that since Deng Xiaoping's reform, Chinese diplomats were recognized as professionals. They were recruited from top elite universities. Peking University, my alma mater, for example, Beijing Foreign Studies University, Beijing Foreign Affairs University, very top elites. They spoke good foreign languages, well trained. And then they follow so-called professional standards, professionalism. There is a paradoxical change when they became professionals. The more they became professional, the less politically important they became. That was a very interesting development. You can see, for example, post-foreign minister position declined, even foreign minister from Politburo standing committee member to Politburo member to vice premier to state councilor. This kind of decline of their political status. And also morale of the, for example, foreign ministry was very low. They work long hours, serve so many clients, patrons, and they were not paid well, did not have a lot of authorities. For example, in embassy, they are different. I mean, commerce ministry, they all have their own bosses, did not listen to them. Xi Jinping came to office, quickly realized this problem, and provide more resources and also more authorities to the Chinese diplomats. For example, in the embassy, now ambassador from foreign ministry is in charge. Financially, everything, I talk to them. And the price is you are no longer professionals. You cannot follow your professional standards. You are first and foremost the party soldiers to be loyal, to follow party line. That's how you are assessed. The second thing he did was enlarge diplomatic apparatus. Other than those state agencies, he put the party diplomacy in the forefront. Party diplomacy used to be behind the scene. Central Propaganda Department, Central United Front Department, Central International Liaison Department, they were behind the scene, but they were posted on the front. For example, Global Civilizational Initiative is in charge by the Central Party's Central International Liaison Department, and also military. The military joint exercise, security cooperation, everything enlarged since Xi Jinping came to office. And he himself also grasped control of the military diplomacy. For example, Hu Jintao and Jiang Zemin lost control to a certain extent, the military. He not only established so-called chairman responsibility system at CMC, Central Military Commission, he also upgraded the International Military Cooperation Office from the Ministry of Defense to the CMC, Central Military Commission. He is in charge himself. Then, what are foreign policy implications? This type of power centralization, there are a lot of them. Let me mention a few, and we can discuss. First is Xi Jinping has established a very strong institutional mobilization capacity to chart a new course for his great power or big power foreign policy to abandon, for example, Deng Xiaoping's no-profile foreign policy. He met so many new initiatives, global development initiative, global security initiative, global civilization initiative, the shared future for mankind, name it, so many things I put there. And also he was in a very strong position to confront with all those challenges, including the U.S. Especially, I'm really impressed by this tit-for-tat action with Trump's tariffs. You can see how these concerted efforts, propaganda, commerce, economic, diplomatic, and state enterprises, this kind of integrated, concerted mobilization in response to Trump tariffs, very effective. If he decided to do it, he did it with very strong institutional support. And also his other things I put there, I don't think, because now the trade war, I really try to follow how this institutional mobilization has been done. The second consequence, I think, it's very important to see the changing incentive structure of Chinese diplomats. When they are provided incentives assessed upon their political loyalty instead of professional standard, they were encouraged to be fighters, to demonstrate their fighting spirit. In that case, Chinese diplomats all become wolf warriors. We can see this kind of shift so quickly since Xi Jinping came to office. For example, Wang Yi, Professor Wang mentioned Wang Yi. When he was ambassador to Japan, he was known as a very polite, professional diplomat. And when I met him, we together met him when he was the Taiwan Affairs Office Director. We went to his office. He was polite, asking, "Oh, you're from the United States. Oh, what do you think?" Oh, he tried very want to learn. Now he's a totally different person under Xi Jinping. He's a top wolf warrior, foreign ministry. You remember they received those calcium tablet, asking them to have a bone to stand up against America, Japan. Now they recast themselves as the defender of China's core national interests. And they, to a certain extent, can be regarded as the ministry of wolf warriors. That change is very clear. Third implications I found I'm also a little bit concerned is that with that kind of unconstrained power in the hands of one person, Xi Jinping, he could do almost anything he wanted to do. Then one big risk is overreach. We talk about the relative power. Xi Jinping, to a certain extent, has overreached in the last 12, 13 years. Has met a lot of enemies, and for his power, for his national security objectives, he sacrificed a lot of other interests, such as economic development interests, and a lot of initiatives is so costly, never complete, such as Belt Road. And when they start huge projects, now they talk 小而美, 可持续性, those kind of new concepts I went to try to figure out, really totally different types of project. And they met so many enemies. This photo, I really like it. 2023, when I was in Beijing, the third BRI Global Forum, 2017, so many heads of states were there. 2019, still a lot. But here, 2023, that's the number, including their spouses. That you can see how China's international standard. In conclusion, I want to speculate a little bit about the type of power centralization and foreign policy implications. What we are is so clear for me, and also I think you can see from my presentation, also my research book. Xi Jinping has very successfully centralized foreign policy making power, and make Chinese foreign policy very personalized. Xi Jinping's foreign policy very personalized, and chart a new course for China's foreign policy direction. But here is that the two consequences here. Either on one hand, he made the right decision, or he realized he made mistakes. He could make corrections, course correction effectively. He did that. I put several of them as examples. He tried to work with India, for example, reverse zero COVID, all those policies without resistance, even without cost. Really amazing he could accomplish those. And with the United States, it's also a very good example. He went to San Francisco 2023, meeting with Joe Biden, met all the concessions. Now he changed course again, fighting the tariffs very effectively. So if he decides to do it, he can do it. If he decides to correct courses, he could correct it. But the other side is also true, that this kind of power centralization minimized the opportunities that he can hear truth. His power is based upon what? Fear. He established fears. Nobody dares to offend him. In other words, nobody dares tell him the truth. Anyone disagree with him is in big risk. I was in Beijing early this year. I just came back this Saturday, talking to people. Privately, a lot of people told you, he's wrong. Supply side economy, all those things, policies, wrong. But nobody dared to tell him in person if he did not show he already got some ideas. Then if he made mistakes, cannot be corrected, there is a consequence. When they have a consequence, he becomes more defensive, make more mistakes. For example, if he decides to go to war in Taiwan, across Taiwan Strait, and China is not ready, could anyone stop him? I don't think so. Even people give him more misinformation. Yes, we can do it 24 hours. Could China do it? Of course not. So that makes China's foreign policy dangerous, could be dangerous, potentially. China could come to the direction of disaster of no return. I think I'll stop here and look forward to Bob's criticism. Thank you.
Thank you, Suisheng. First, let me begin by saying it's just a pleasure to welcome here an old friend and to compliment him far more than Mark did because his exceptional contribution to the field. When Suisheng was last here, his host was Ezra Vogel, and Ezra recalled that when Suisheng began the Journal of Contemporary China, it was a mere pamphlet.
Let me add one sentence here. Vogel's last article was published in my journal. In fact, he had proofs when he was on the way to hospital. He emailed me, said, "Oh, I'm on hospital. I'll be back in a couple of days." Then,
today, this journal is the most cited journal in the world of contemporary Chinese studies. So we're all grateful for that. Second, I have read the two pieces that you have talked about today, and I commend them to all of you. I have learned a lot about both the interplay of politics and personality, and the article on how Xi Jinping has transformed the policymaking apparatus opened up things to me I had not seen before, so I'm grateful for that. Comments, questions? Mark, how long should I talk for? 5 minutes. Oh, okay. Forgive me. I'll have to edit myself here. So what I appreciate about the book and the comments is that too many people talk about structure and realism, or too many China types talk about domestic politics to the exclusion of each. And the foremost person of structural realism once said, "Structure constrains, but it does not determine." And that just points to the need to integrate personality, politics with foreign policy. And this book does this better than any book I've seen before. So I highly commend it. In your comments, you said we have the interplay of capabilities and leadership, which is true. But there's a third thing, capabilities, leadership, and the challenges countries face. And how they respond to those challenges can be equally informing of what they are doing. So it's not just capabilities and personality, but what is other countries doing to China, or what is the system doing to China? So you mentioned in your book that when Mao decided to intervene in the Korean War, he faced the challenge of American troops with a long-term presence on the Yalu River, and this was unacceptable. Now, perhaps other leaders might have done something different, but one can see how Mao was responding to a critical foreign policy challenge. So somehow we have to find ways how we integrate that. You talk about the types of leaders, and talk about the missions they have. And certainly Mao and Deng Xiaoping were different, and certainly Xi Jinping you imply is different. But I want to bring this back to sort of capabilities again. You suggest that the difference between Jiang Zemin and Hu Jintao versus Xi Jinping is under Hu Jintao and Jiang Zemin, China was a rising power. But under Xi Jinping, it was also rising power, so the capabilities were constant. But the policy changed. And the policy change reflected personality. I want to push back a little on this. There was a big debate in 2008 in the aftermath of the financial crisis, where many Chinese thought that China's time had come. And so we had a revision of the Taoguang Hui, reflecting leadership debates. But many Chinese were disappointed that China was unable to exercise greater authority in East Asia following the financial crisis. And the reason for a realist would be, well, China had only developed economic power. And there is a correspondence between Xi Jinping taking over leadership and the rise of the Chinese Navy. So I wonder whether or not the response of Hu Jintao and Jiang Zemin to China's capabilities versus Xi Jinping's response to Chinese capabilities reflected greater Chinese capabilities in the military realm and not just simply a personality responding to a constant. You talk about centralization at the top, and we have Xi Jinping's personality becomes very important. And I want to ask you how you understand his personality in foreign policy making. And so you frequently refer to overexpansion or overreaching. But again, we need to put that in the context of the challenges that China faced and the capabilities. And some have actually said that Xi Jinping has been restrained in the response to the Biden administration growing defense, diplomatic, and economic cooperation with Taiwan, bases in the Philippines, a ideological war on China's undermining of the liberal international order. And so the question became, how do you respond to growing American containment of China, East Asia, and the growing ideological and economic battle with tariffs beginning under Trump, escalating under Biden. So this is the challenge China faced in the combination of greater capabilities. Do you think that Xi Jinping has been restrained, or do you think he has been overactive and should be more accommodating to American policy, given what many might call the growing containment of China? Two small questions. But I would also add to that the wolf warrior diplomacy. We forget that the most active wolf warrior at the time that China developed wolf warrior was Secretary of State Pompeo. And so this is a time when China was, one, facing Pompeo, going after China in Xinjiang and human rights, and refusing to say the word China, but only said Chinese Communist Party. So it would have been inevitable you would see Chinese diplomats push back. And now we have Chinese pushing back, inevitably, against China's challenge to the liberal international order or to Trump's foreign policies. So how do you weigh the impact of the decline of professionalism versus the challenges China faced with growing capabilities? Again, another example of the challenges. Then two small questions. The commissions you have are, I think, very important. What role do you see Huang Huning playing in these commissions? Is he a politician? Does he have his own authority, or is he the voice of Xi Jinping on these commissions? And then second, regarding the leading small group on maritime rights, a small question. There is a debate or discussion in our field about when did Xi Jinping take over policymaking for foreign policy. Now, he became party secretary in October 2012, but there's a lot of thinking that he took over this particular small group in the summer of 2012. And that would explain a lot of initiatives, such as the Diaoyu problem, and even earlier, such as the Huangyan Dao problem with the Philippines. So when do you see we tend to pay a lot of attention to institutions rather than to personal capabilities, but when do you see him rising above the institutions and exercising greater authority over foreign policy before the Party Congress in October 2012?
Those are very important questions and need hours to.
We're having dinner tonight, so we will continue.
Yeah, I want to have a good dinner. We can talk, but during the dinner. But the central question here is the capacity versus leadership actions. For me, here is when the structural factors is presented to the leaders, they see two things. One is constraints, the other is opportunities. And each leader would have different perceptions of those opportunities and constraints. And not only according to objective capacity, what we have, and the challenges are, but according to their visions, what they want to accomplish. They want to overcome what? That's what I see those leaders in response to the capacity or structure issues. And each different leader will have a very different responses, even with a given capacity and a given challenge. For example, you mentioned the 2008, 2009, the debate about if China should give up Taoguang Yanghui. There are three schools of thought, everything those scholars debated. But Wen Jiabao and Hu Jintao was so clear. Doesn't matter how capacity we have developed. We have to follow the Yaoping's Taoguang Yanghui, will not give up. Even Wen Jiabao, I still remember when he was in Europe, he used the term 大国. Oh, then the Xinhua News agency tried to downplay. Oh, he did not mean it. Yeah, it's the capacity is there, but he, according to his vision of China's position and his policy objective, he did not respond. Xi Jinping responded quickly and decisively. For example, here, again on maritime issue you talked about. I talked to quite a few people in Beijing. They told me they gave advices to Hu Jintao about building those artificial islands. Hu Jintao, even the last year of Hu Jintao in office, oh, we cannot do it. It's too proactive. Xi Jinping came to office just a few months after. Xi Jinping said, great idea. Let's do it. So the capacity did not change. The challenge did not change. He made totally different decision at that time. You can see Jin Tanrong, even Jin Tanrong told me the story, how the technology they already developed to in those oceans to create so much kind of environmental disaster, even in their words.
You believed yourself?
Here is a different issue for Jin Tanrong. For his opinions, I may not.
Okay.
No, trust him. But he had internal information I would get from him for sure. And so that type of decisions, without Xi Jinping, you will not see that 7 artificial islands. Even though China had technology, China had military capacity, China faced the same challenge in South China Sea. It will not do it. So the perception, I studied nationalism. I look at China's patriotic education campaign. And before Xi Jinping, the campaign was what I called affirmative nationalism, which emphasized positive us versus we. China faced very challenging international environment, but Jiang Zemin and Hu Jintao tried to see, yes, this challenge, but we can integrate into this system to develop China. But Xi Jinping came to our office, totally changed this theme of patriotic education. Of course, still affirmative us. We are the great nation, but there's an evil other. The target, the patriotic education target, is no longer affirmative us, but evil Western liberal ideas, anti-China forces. He created those enemies. The environment when he came to office, same. So leaders' perceptions in that case, their visions of China in the world is more important than the structure or capacity issue. But of course, you're right. In the long term, structure and ability will come to either constrain or advance their policy agenda. But that's a different issue here. And you mentioned Pompeo. Pompeo is a real. When Pompeo's last visit to Beijing, 2018, I was also in Beijing. In fact, the same dialogue we had last December in Beijing. Chris Hill was the dean of our school. U.S. Embassy people came to us and said, "Oh, this visit was disaster. Why disaster? Why disaster? But because 2018, Trump launched trade war, and wolf warrior met wolf warrior. In fact, Pompeo requested meeting with Xi Jinping. China said no. Then he had meeting with Wang Yi only for half hour. The entire half hour, Wang Yi lectured him. Did not give time for him to respond. What was more interesting, the embassy people told us was he was not invited for dinner, banquet. For the visit to China, the banquet is always so enjoyable. He did not get it. So that kind of wolf warrior, China really no professional treatment if you are our enemies.
Hi, I'm Tom Palmer, a former journalist. At the end of your excellent talk, you said that if Xi does not listen to people who disagree with him and only listens to people that tell him what he wants to think, things could fall apart, or you use some questions like that, or some terms like that. Do you have any idea of how that might take place? Is it all internal and he would lose power to someone else, or would it be something more external and maybe not as calm?
Can I piggyback on that question? Most leaders don't accept criticism once they make a decision. So once Joe Biden decided what to do in Ukraine, no one challenged him. So perhaps the critical issue in this respect is, how well is he briefed to understand the situation? Or is he making it in his own bubble where his briefings are minimal too, that could lead to that kind of collapse? Yeah.
I think the China system has a very good information loop to the top. They have a lot of different channels. Even the scholars, like in the Beijing University and the think tanks, how they are assessed. 地折子, to get peace from the top leaders. Everyone try to present. And very often, they say truth. For example, I talked to who in Shanghai, a historian. He said, "Oh, I told them, to the leaders, we cannot attack Taiwan. We should not attack Taiwan." I said, "How could you dare to say that?" He said, "Internally, I can say that." But how this would reach to Xi Jinping's desk, that's a different issue. 中央办公厅, the central office in the party, or Xi's office, they are gatekeepers to decide which would get to his desk and what he will read. And these people know what in his mind, what he wanted. So that's the issue here. There's so many information and a lot of very good information to reach to the top. But if he could use them, that's a totally different issue. To a great extent, I would say Xi Jinping is making decisions like President Putin in Russia in a bubble. Very good example is zero COVID. I mean, in March 2022, it's so clear already zero COVID cannot sustain. Until that's when Shanghai, then Wuhan, then not Wuhan, Chongqing, then Shanghai, August, Xi Jinping did not get information until November, the white paper movement. Remember when he met European in November, he met with European Commission president. He said, oh, I heard some students are not happy. I heard some students are happy in this November. They were not happy whole year already. So that you can see the information, because zero COVID is his signature decision. Nobody dares to challenge him, even to fit him with reality until November, when the widespread white paper movement, you cannot cover up, he heard. And he changed overnight with consequences. So many people died. So I'm really concerned about this decision-making mechanism under Xi Jinping today.
And how do you think it might evolve to cause a crisis for China in the future?
You mean the...
I think that was sort of what we were asking is, given the dysfunctions of the leadership decision-making, and you were suggesting that this could lead to a major crisis for China.
Oh, yeah. Could be. This tariff war is a big gamble. Looks like he's winning.
Yes.
He's winning. If he is not winning, the Chinese internal economy, economic problems, social and elite level tension would erupt. I was in Beijing several times in the last half year, and I sensed these kind of tensions at top. I talked to a few only retired vice minister level officials. They told me all those stories. I was shocked, really shocked at that level. And at a societal level, you can also see those unemployment, youth, and especially now the trade war, those factories, those companies doing business with the U.S. in Dongguan and Guangdong, all those places. If this gambling is wrong, crisis, definite crisis. Of course, Taiwan is another issue here. Those are public information. You can see when those rocket forces journals were fired. Why they were fired? One of the causes was they complained about China was not ready to take Taiwan. Why top level had that confidence? They fired them. Then Miao Hua is a totally different story. Miao Hua, he's Xi Jinping's person, and he and some other military officers thought, because he's so eager to take Taiwan, let's give him the information. We can take Taiwan in 24 hours. If he decides to take Taiwan, we, the military, will get more power. So they can see this type of dynamics when you make wrong decisions internally and, of course, externally.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, thank you for being here. Two questions, if I may. My name is Daniel Fu. I'm a research associate at the business school. Earlier in the foreign policy implications, you were talking about wolf warrior diplomacy. Zhao Lijian and a lot of wolf warriors have actually been demoted, giving rather unceremoniously. What does that say to you? And earlier on in your presentation, you discussed how leadership matters, especially in a Marxist-Leninist system like China's, because public opinion matters less. But then later on in your discussion, you talk about when Xi Jinping was consolidating power, nationalism along the masses was actually a very powerful driving force for that, to enable him to do that. So is there a contradiction there? What is the role of public opinion in Chinese politics today? Thank you.
Chinese, I don't know if I talk about Marxism or this type of ideology. Nationalism is always the driving force ideationally in the Chinese society and Chinese policy making. So I don't know if there's contradiction. If they talk about Xi Jinping, do you think he's a nationalist or Marxist? I think he's a nationalist first. He uses Marxist ideology for his power purpose. 从严治党, that's the people's 从严 use Marxist disciplinary Leninist disciplinary to grab power. That's the purpose there. Nationalism has been a very powerful force, and he has been very, I think, successful to mobilize nationalist aspirations, especially among the younger generation. And this generation, they were raised, I mean those born after 1980s. They grew up during China's rising economic time. They benefited from that. And also during Xi Jinping's patriotic education, how the Communist Party was so great to lead China to be powerful, prosper. Third, this generation, they grew up within the information wall. I mean, firewall. They did not get Google, did not get international information. They only get information that China Communist Party gave to them. So this new generation of nationalists were very supportive of the Communist Party, and also very avert to any criticism of China by external forces. I am really amazed, very uncomfortable. I invite Chinese scholars to my school. In the past, they came to my classes willing to listen to my analysis of problems of China. Now, they stand up against what I said in my classroom. This is the big change I can see. And, but I will still argue that nationalism is a double-edged sword. And they could help the party, could also subversive to the party leadership, because they would raise expectations of Chinese people. If a Chinese government leadership cannot provide, these people will be disappointed and turn against the party. Even this new generation of leadership, I think there's the turning point, 2022, the COVID. These people suffered since then. Not only suffered about this kind of lockdown, all those things. Since then, the economy is kind of going down. They could not find a job. So we'll see how this nationalist development in China, double-edged direction.
So in your book, you talk about this.
Yeah.
And you leave it open for the future with Xi Jinping about the potential impact of nationalism. So it seems what you've been saying is that up to now, Xi Jinping has manipulated nationalism for his own benefit.
Right.
But we haven't seen nationalism force him to do things he doesn't want to do. Is that correct?
Yes, and also Trump tariff wall. I don't want to use trade war now. It's a tariff wall because it's usually only one instrument, tariff.
Oh, okay.
Helps Xi Jinping a lot. Without this tariff wall, a lot of domestic problems will be intensified. But now this tariff wall helped to put all the blames on America. I talked to people. I was in Beijing last week, and those people, they really got information. U.S. is in big trouble. That's why U.S. tries to undermine China, try to get China. It's a long-term U.S. strategy, Trump. I try to explain to Trump, but no, it's the American long-term strategy. So all those internal issues in this context become minor, trivial. So that's why this nationalist aspiration is so useful under external pressure.
Yes.
Yes, hi. My name is Maksud. I'm a visiting scholar from Azerbaijan at the Russia-Eurasia Studies. As we speak, our president is in China signing BRI MOU. But my question is on, I would like to hear your thought on two identity projection of China. You explained the great power under Xi Jinping, the China is a great power in globally. But at the same time, China wants to be also known as developing country rather than developed country. I understand that one is economically, aligned, one is political, but China wanting to be one of the great power can it carry this dual identity? Thank you.
China has different identities. When Xi Jinping talked about China as a big power diplomacy, I don't think a developing country identity is in his mind. When he talked about China's development initiative, identify China with the global south, he used the identity of developing country, third world country. So I think that's what the China's is like contradictory or whatever, this type of position. And they have used that very well to serve their foreign policy or domestic objectives.
We have time for one more question. Yes, ma'am, up top there.
Hi, I'm Zijing. I'm a visiting student at Government Department. Thanks for your talk. My question is, how do you think the intentions of Xi is consistent or not? Because I think from the policy he cares about, we can say through the zero COVID, he cares about national security, but now he seems cares more about the economic development. So how do you think his intention about the policy is consistent or not, and how will that influence maybe just like the China's future, something like this? Thank you.
For Deng Xiaoping, economic development was everything. 发展是硬道理, everything economic development. And Xi Jinping came to office, tried to find a balance between economic development and regime and national security. Eventually, I think since 2018, the Trump won trade war, he has decided that security is the top priority, and economic development is still very important, but he could sacrifice if security and development is in conflict. That's what I think Xi Jinping's policy, which produced a lot of problems for China. In fact, I even argue that Trump won trade war was a huge wake-up call for Xi Jinping to realize, eventually realize he was overreached before 2018. You still remember when he came to office, he not only talked about the China dream, all those things. He, this type of Jin Canrong, Huan Gang, all those type of views of China already overtook U.S. Economic, technology, the military, everything. Really reflect in his policy making. And one word those people talk about, China is no longer 仰视, but the 平视, and the U.S., those kind of things. But since 2018, this kind of security, U.S., China has in relationship with the United States, has a U.S. dilemma, I always use that term, economic opportunity versus the security threat. So he eventually realized, he made decision security is top priority, but the cost was so high. In 2023, he tried to shift. That's why he met with Blinken, June, then the fall cabinet visits in June, July, August. He went to San Francisco, met Joe Biden, met all those concessions. Even President Trump came to office. Inauguration, Trump invited him to Washington. He did not come, sent Han Zheng, very high level. And that's a very, I would say, even kind of humiliating position when Han Zheng was in that rotunda. Taiwan speaker was there too. But he sent them, he tried to work with the United States, but he failed. And security, this tit-for-tat tariff war proved the security is top priority. economic development could be satisfied, he was willing to escalate confrontations with the expense of the economic
Thank you
development.
very much. This has been one of our best sessions, and we've learned a lot. So let's give a good thank you here.